Hello, hi everyone. This is Irlianna back again with another edition of StarSound Speaks, StarSound Astrology. Well, oh my goodness, episode 90. Can't believe it, the big 90. This one's about the astrology for March at large. So we're going to be covering the major transits. We're going to be going over Mars just having gone into Gemini, and then the new moon in Pisces on the 13th. We're also going to be talking about Mercury's entrance into Pisces. So it's a very dreamy, Pisces, mystical, dreamy, imaginative, inspiring month with all this Piscean energy going on. So, and then of course we have the beginning of, it's the equinox. So it's the spring equinox in the Northern Hemisphere and the fall equinox in the Southern Hemisphere for all you fabulous Kiwis and Aussies and South Africans and Ugandans. I think you're below it. Yeah. And all the fabulous, I'm just saying Uganda because it just came to mind, all these the fabulous people of Africa and South America below the equator, right? Where everything Quito and South. So anyway, and Antarctica. Okay, so if anyone's listening from Antarctica, we got you covered too. Happy fall equinox coming up. Anyway, yeah, so we've got a lot to go over, and I got some cool stories to share too. All right, so the first thing is Mars just entered the sign of Gemini yesterday, and it takes about 6 weeks for Mars to go through a sign. So you'll see, and it's interesting to use Mars as an example of how energies shift as they move into different signs. So if you remember back with the Capitol riots that happened on January 6th, Mars was in the sign of Aries, which it had been in for 6 months because normally it's 2, but see, it retrograded and then it went back through again. So it took a good 6 months for it to get out of the sign of Aries, its home sign. Well, of course, being, the planet of war and aggression, in its domicile of Aries, what did we see? Guns, blades, and knives, right? At the Capitol. Very unfortunate tragedy. People died. You know the drill. You know what happened there. Then that very afternoon, that very moment that they were, they were all storming through the halls of the Capitol, that Mars was at 29 degrees, the final degree, the final minutes of Aries. And I remember watching it on TV, and I'm going, okay, I knew that any moment it was supposed to, or did it flip into Taurus? So I looked it up online, and I'm like, wow, the very moment, it was around 5:30 in the afternoon. That's when it went 0 degrees of Taurus, and boom, that's when the people started leaving the building peacefully, right? They were the mob scene at the Aries energy, and then calm and grace. Why? Well, Venus rules Taurus. So there was peace and calmness, and there was a harmony, like people were leaving quietly and being escorted out of the building. So the whole peacemaking energies have been ongoing, since that moment. Conflict with this overlay of wanting peace and harmony, because that's all Venus wants, is peace and harmony, love, connection. Well, now we have Venus moving into, Mars now has moved into Gemini, 0 degrees of Gemini. So again, any planet at 0 degrees, you're going to get, it's like a little preview of what it's going to bring. So watch, it's at 0 degrees right now, and watch what happens, because that's kind of a little preview of what energies and potentials are, available. Well, Mercury rules Gemini, so this Mars transit has a Mercury feel, so it's about communication. So whereas we had Mars and Aries being very combative, like physically combative, physical aggression, this is more a war of words, you could say. If you're going to be warrior-like and aggressive, it's around words and ideas and communications, because that's what everything Gemini rules. And so sadly, we see this with, the situation with Harry and Meghan and the Oprah interview that's coming up in Buckingham Palace. So here they are sharing Mars energy, right? Now, yes, it was recorded earlier. I don't know exactly when, but probably during Mars in Taurus. But anyway, it's very unfortunate is that people have come up who were former staffers saying, you know, that Meghan bullied them and blah, blah, blah. And then the next thing you know is Buckingham Palace has apparently launched an investigation into, you know, this situation. And when I first read that headline, I thought, oh my goodness, well, they're going to find out who's been saying these nasty things about Meghan. And then I realized, oh no, they're launching an investigation into her. Like, that's his family. Like, wow. Yeah. So, and, you know, when you think about Mercury too, it rules gossip, it rules trickery, you know, like Mercury is the thief in the night, and cunning, you know, con artistry, cunning, you know, you could say backstabbing, gossiping, that kind of thing is very dark energy. That's what we have to look out for. And so really, very sad, especially when you consider that these are not new allegations. These were said against her 3 years ago. 3 years ago. So they're digging up something just coincidentally right before the Oprah interview, right? That digging up something about somebody gossip from 3 years ago, right before they're probably going to be shown in, well, they're going to be shown the truth. And so we're going to hear a lot of truth about what that was like. And that very attitude of things is, as we know, is what drove them from the royal life. So good on you, Harry and Meghan. You know, bless your hearts. Go for it. Speak your truth. Mars and Gemini, man, you're going to have the power to speak boldly and courageously. And you've had to do that for quite a while. So, you know, my hat is off to you. And for all of us, you know, we can use this time to speak very boldly. And yes, it could be provocative, or we could put forth provocative, strong ideas about leadership and communicate, the way in which we move and forward. And our goal-oriented, you know, goal-oriented Mars has that Mercury aspect. So it's maybe listening and shifting and listening to others, not gossiping, but being passionate and bold with our communications. That would be the best use of that Mars and Gemini transit. Mars will line up with the North Node later this month. The North Node, of course, has been in Gemini for almost the past year, giving us the Gemini-Sag eclipses. And so it's lining up there. It will really embolden and empower us to make changes in that way about listening to others and you know, not being arrogant and not having a feeling of entitlement, and, you know, moving away from those energies and embracing and understanding and being willing to listen. That would definitely be a boost at the end of the month when Mars joins up there to really engage in that manner. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. But anyway, just to move on. Okay, so we've got that. Mars and Gemini. And then on Saturday, March 13th, we have the new moon in Pisces. So this past month of the new moon in Aquarius, of course, as I've shared on previous videos, that was very powerful and magical, you know, with 6 planets in Aquarius. Talk about new beginnings, talk about breaking free of the past, very inventive and ingenious new ways, quantum leaps in consciousness. Well, the new moon in Pisces, Sun and Moon in Pisces, this particular lunation, it will be, and I may talk about this more in a different video, you know, digging in deep as we get closer to that, but very exciting because with that lineup, we have dreamy Neptune in its home sign of Pisces, Venus in Pisces. She loves Pisces. That does very well there. She's exalted. It's the term in astrology. She's exalted in Pisces. So pure love and harmony and unconditional love and selfless service. It's like, oh, all those wonderful connections infused with those higher qualities of, you know, in bhakti, like the word bhakti in Sanskrit is devotion, the yoga of devotion, of like pure devotion to the divine. So we have the opportunity to develop and really lose ourselves in cosmic divine bliss, you know, and this is what the new moon can bring us. Of course, there are some red flags with Neptune energy and Venus connected in that exaltation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and maybe even share an interesting story that might drive some of that home for us. But yes, it can be very, romantic with Venus there and Neptune, intoxicating even, intoxicating love. But of course, faith, I think of faith when I think of Neptune, having faith and hope and faith in the divine. It's nice that just around this time of the new moon, we're going to be having, I think by then is when the Senate is supposed to vote and do the final vote on the stimulus bill, the COVID relief bill in Congress that has been bandied about. So that should be, at least it's fortuitous. So I have a good feeling about that with that new moon. Again, a feeling of hope and faith restored. Venus ruling personal finances, right? Your bank account. Neptune, like kind of unlimitedness, of course we don't want to blow the bank, but it seems that we'll definitely be getting these relief package and probably around, hopefully the same way. I feel it bodes well for that. So, and Venus also being protected from the beams of the sun is going to be, she's so, with that situation there with the new moon, so she's not getting burned up, so there's this sense of, getting what we need and, divine grace, like Deus ex machina, the goddess descends, in the Greek plays when everything is, oh my God, what's going to happen? Well, God is the machine, Deus ex machina, God is the machine, in the ancient Greek plays, they would descend from the clouds and God would come down from the heavens, which is like a Jupiterian, theme. He'd come down and he'd fix everything, so kind of like with dreamy Neptune, it's like, somebody's going to save us, like that. Now, of course, the flip side is that it can be very escapist and we could definitely lose ourselves in love. I think about when I lived in Sedona years ago. God, I love Sedona. It's one of the happiest chapters of my life. Was about 5 years I lived there, and but I had a wonderful job, and it was living the good life, right? I left Manhattan, and from the concrete canyons of Manhattan to the red rocks of Sedona, and I'm working in the art world, and I have this great job and it's beautiful. My commute was through the red rocks. I mean, you can't, I used to schlep on a subway for umpteen years, right? Now I'm riding through the red rocks. So yes, quite a difference. But there were always people, and God bless them, they come out to find themselves, and I did too. I mean, I just happened, having come from New York, more grounded and realistic. I love the mystical life, which is why I moved there, of course, to develop myself on a deeper spiritual level, outside of the mayhem of Manhattan. And I did, and I grew immensely, but I'm chuckling because I'm just thinking of this lunation with the Venus, Neptune, and Pisces. You could go out and have a mystical experience and then go, oh, I'm just, sometimes you meet people, they're like, I'm like, okay, what do you do? Well, they live in the bushes, it's like, okay. What do you do for, I don't work, it's like, okay, how do you eat? It's like, woo, faith, they definitely was definitely living on faith. So good lessons for me, but sometimes it can leave us very ungrounded. And then the shadow part is about escaping reality and not seeing things clearly for what they are. So there's always that temperance, right? It's, how we play that out. So, but it can lead to some really mystical, magical encounters. When I was preparing my notes for this podcast, I was thinking about years ago, oh my God, this really great story. There's this guy that I was in a relationship with, and he was a little older than me, wonderful man, great stories. He wrote a book about some of the stories. He'd been all over the world, like 100 countries, and met all these great people and such. Well, one of the people or group of people that he met in his amazing travels, like totally worthy of a book, even a movie, was the Rolling Stones. And an amazing long story, but it reminds me of this upcoming new moon in Pisces where you let mystical, magical, lose yourself, kind of thing. He, at one point, I'm not even going to tell the story as good as him, of course, but he was living with Keith Richard in his house in Bel Air. And Keith, they were going to do a project together, and then boom, Keith went on tour. Mick and Keith were on some kind of outs with each other at the time, and then they came back, went on tour, left the guy that I say, we'll call him Rob, left Rob in the dust, went off their merry way, started to do a tour. I don't know, fade to black, months pass, whatever. Rob is in, I want to say it's Philadelphia, and he, for some reason, he's in Philly, he's on business, and he goes to this hotel that he's staying in, and he pulls up to the hotel, and it's late at night, and he gets out of the car, and as he gets out of the car, this limousine pulls up next to him, and the door opens, and he gets out, and the door opens, and who gets out of the limousine but Mick Jagger? And it's like, and their eyes meet, and it's like, oh my God, Rob, oh my God, Mick, like, wow, and he's like, hey, come party with us, like they're on tour. They were doing one of their tours. So, they at the hotel. So he goes to the hotel, and of course they're having this outrageous, Bacchanalian, Dionysian, as only the Stones could do kind of party. And I remember to hear him tell it, he said, just even walking down the hallway and just, you could feel their presence, their outrageous, now I am biased. I love the Stones. But that, even Keith, what's his name? The shaman, the one who does McKenna, Terrence McKenna talked about the Rolling Stones, and people asked, who are the shamans of our age? And he said Bob Dylan and the Rolling Stones. Those are the two that came to mind. I'm like, wow, that was interesting. I figured Dylan, but when I contemplated, I'm like, yeah, the Rolling Stones, man. But anyway, so Rob's walking down the hallway, and feel his presence. He said you could palpably feel it as you got closer to the door of the hotel suite. And of course, inside was this incredible, feast. And you can imagine, beautiful women and wine flowing and food. And, I'm sure they collectively have a lot of planets in Taurus. Love to see what astrological configuration was going on then. But anyway, it was just, incredible, the most sumptuous feast of food and wine and women and probably other things. And so, but it was this outrageous gathering of, they always talk about the beautiful people, this kind of thing. And he's witnessing all of this, and fade to black, they partied all night. And then, in the morning, maybe it was a different astrological transit, because all I know, the moon might have left wherever it was. And when the smoke cleared, so to speak, there were these guys showed up. I'm calling them the suits. These are the guys that are watching the tour, that it goes off as planned. I mean, it is rock and roll rock stars. It is the Rolling Stones we're talking about. And apparently Keith Richard had just come out of rehab. He had been, he had a really bad heroin. I mean, he almost died of heroin addiction. So he had just gotten out of rehab, and these suits came, and they kept walking around the room. I think the room was completely trashed. And I don't know, Rob is standing there in the midst of all this post-party, apocalyptic scene, and they look at him, and he wasn't too disheveled, and they look around, and they said, hey, you over here. And they talk to him. They go, who are you and what do you do? Well, Rob was very involved in health and health foods and health food ventures. And they basically, they long story short, they needed somebody to take care of to make sure that everybody was, especially Keith, would not fall off the wagon. So they hired him to go on tour with them to make sure he was going to be fine. He was kind of like this corporate babysitter, so to speak. So he said, yes, he did it. And he flew all over the world on their tour. So, I mean, that is like, talk about, you know, sun, moon, Venus, Neptune, conjunct in Pisces. That's like the most outrageous cosmic kind of story, you know, out of nowhere, right? Out of the fog of Neptune. Talk about the dream experience and the dream job that results from a dream experience. You know, it just, anyway, it just flashed in my mind as I was contemplating and meditating and doing my research for this lunation. So, you know, what's possible? Well, the ideal love, the ideal connections, you know, with this new moon. So, wow, you know, that could be, who knows what could happen, but we could lose our heads too. So the flip side is the, you know, like you fall in love with the divine so much that you don't show up for work, you know. It's like, okay, you know, so it's definitely needing to find that balance. So maybe, you know, seek the divine. I go for that all the way, but maybe eat some carrots before you do, so you can keep your feet on the ground. Whatever. So that's our, definitely a time to meet the divine, you know. If you were into, you know, I guess if you're into plant medicine, that could be one possible way, or just chanting, you know, Venus and I think of the arts and music, you know, delving and losing yourself in music, creating music, you know, playing music, listening to music, just immersing yourself in the arts. That would be a really great, it's going to be a great new moon for that. You know, very incredible outcomes, you know, from cosmic consciousness. Compounded a few days later when Mercury enters Pisces at 0 degrees. So again, you know, Mercury being that the cosmic, the divine interdimensional traveler, right? The hermetic, the magician who moves in and out of worlds, the higher worlds where Zeus and all the big dudes, you know, live and breathe, and then coming down and sharing those messages from the gods with the masses. You know, it's that archetype of walking in two worlds and being in that dream time. So again, more amazing Piscean energy. Mercury, of course, likes facts and data and things and busyness. Well, Mercury in Pisces, it kind of loses that, right? So it's in its fall in Pisces. Now, that doesn't mean it's bad, but again, you could lose your mind, but not in a good way, you know, so we want to be careful. One thing is like, you know, I think of somebody I know, a friend of mine is, he's a psychiatrist, and he has the moon, he has Mercury in Pisces. And even though it's technically in detriment, but Mercury in Pisces can do wonderful things. I mean, look, as a psychiatrist, hello, he's an incredible psychiatrist. And that's perfectly suited, you know, to be able to speak to people and counsel them and connect with them, and with the psyche and the mind, and, you know, healing people in that way. And the most incredibly kind, compassionate man. He's like a saint, you know. I hold him in the highest regard. But yeah, Mercury in Pisces, you know, so we can communicate as saints. How about that? You know, I think the world needs this high vibe very much so now, as we're facing all these challenges as COVID is still, yes, the cases are falling, but you know, we still have some significant challenges to overcome with that, climate change and all the rest. So having a compassionate view and desiring a compassionate divine connection with others, and our thoughts and writings and communications and engagements being of that high mystical space. This will be a really good, juicy time for that with Mercury in Pisces. Let's see, March 18th, we have, I want to shout out to March 18th because the lunar eclipse that happened at back in November 30th, there was a lunar eclipse at 8 degrees of Gemini. Well, we are going to have Uranus at 8 degrees of Taurus, but Mars is going to be at 8 degrees of Gemini, which is in the United States of America chart, We have Uranus, the planet of rebellion, revolution, upsetment, technology, genius. You know, we have Uranus in the sign of Gemini. So Mars is going to line up on about March 18th, and it might be a few days earlier that we'll feel it, but Mars is going to line up with Uranus in the sign in the USA chart. So that should be again some very dynamic, maybe some sudden changes, revolutionary changes or movements. And again, being in Gemini, ideas. So bold, innovative, original ideas and thinking. And it's around the same time as the COVID bill is, about to be passed, and hopefully, right, fingers crossed. So that'll be a really dynamic, interesting time of this kind of thing, depending on which, the Sibley chart has Uranus in the 6th house, which is the workplace and workers and such. I mean, actually both that and a Gemini rising chart, they both are valid. This is divination. It's not like right and one's wrong. Astrology being, just showing truths, just different paths and lenses from which to view things. But I think whether you want to say Uranus is in the 1st house in the USA chart or the 6th house of work and service or the 1st house of self-image, it's still truth. You'll see some dynamic changes ahead. Whenever Mars conjuncts a point in a chart, it's like action, right? Movement. And depending on, of course, what sign it is, we'll tell you what kind of movement. But I just wanted to put that little jing in. Next month is when we're going to have our, it won't be till next month. We're going to be having the first Mars activations of those eclipses that happened in December and last June, but that'll be for next month. I'll be talking about that. Oh, let's see. Okay, then we have the first day of spring, yay, or the first day of fall if you're in the southern hemisphere. Is the Aries ingress. That's the official name, right? Ingress, it just means entrance. Aries, the entrance of the sun in Aries on March 20th will be the equinox. And that is going to be, this is when the light takes over. So even if you're in the southern hemisphere, when we're talking about the light, you can say, well, but it's fall. How could the light be taking over? Isn't the light dimming? Yeah, seasonally, yes. But in ancient astrology, what we look at is it's the symbology of light and dark. So, in the Greek times, in the ancient Greek Hellenistic astrology, Greece being in the northern hemisphere, did it pattern the seasons? Yes, it did. But more importantly, and this was really hard for me to get because I was still like, what about the Australians? I was like upset learning this. I had to get my mind off of marrying it to the seasons because it's a symbolic exchange of light and dark, and it's the path of divine light versus earth light and the interplay between the two. So that's how we approach these things. But anyway, we have the Aries ingress March 20th, and I'm looking at, Venus is going to be at 29 Pisces then, and it's conjunct a fixed star called Sheet. And that would be a lot about, comforting the lost or comforting or being of selfless service to those who maybe feel marginalized or in need, and being kind and gracious and compassionate to the most marginalized or whoever might feel that they're in prison and, working in a domestic violence shelter, for example, Venus ruling women and such. Just something of that nature where we can, forge, new beginnings. Zero Aries is the beginning of the zodiacal year. It's like our new year in astrology is not the Chinese New Year, and it's not January 1st in the Gregorian calendar. It's March 20th. It's Zero Aries, the starting point. So anyway, just wanted to say that. Venus is going to be on from the 22nd, right after that, from the 22nd to the 27th, Venus is going to be conjunct the sun. And there's a term, we call it in the heart of the sun. So if you could imagine, this is, you know, with the Venus, it's called Cazimi. When it gets right within the degree of the sun, it's like the, you know, the sun is like think of Louis XIV, the Sun King, right? Entering the throne room where there's light emanating and you're like standing in the presence of the divine. And so this is very, can be very mesmerizing, where you lose yourself in divine light, you could say, you know, with Venus Cazimi. So that will be, that'll be happening at the end of the month, you know, in the heart of the sun. So it's, what's Venus? The goddess, right? So it's like the rebirth of the divine feminine goddess energy. It's a new way it's a new way to define ourselves. It's, you know, where in many ways, not just romantically, but just socially, you know, how we connect with others. Renewing, you know, social connections, friendships, things of that nature. Venus is going to be in Aries. It's, you know, it's in its detriment, right? Because Mars is ruling that particular transit. And so Venus doesn't like, you know, to be in Aries. Venus wants to be cushy, comfy. Aries is that hard Mars-driven energy. But it's, so Venus is, it's like saying, you know, a desire for connection, we want to assert ourselves and define it, and like, this is how it's going to be, you know, make a statement and be bold about our desire for connection. The full moon is going to be on the 28th of the month. The full moon is going to be in Libra. And this is definitely, you know, this is a pivoting point, you know, with Aries energy. It's always, again, a pivot, a beginning. It's a cardinal sign. It's the taking the reins and starting new. And so you could say too that, you know, this might mean with the full moon in Libra, the sun in Aries and the moon in Libra, it might be about being courageous about leaving a relationship where, you know, it's time to leave, and it's time to, you know, and where we're looking at our values, like what's really important to us, and do our relationships line up? Do the people in our life line up with these values? And if they don't, being strong and taking the courage to leave and go, you know what, I think it's time for me to move on. So it's not just Mercury retrograde where things come to an end. You know, we look at the rich, complex transits and energies of Venus as it moves through signs. And this would be at the end of the month with the full moon in Libra. We might be getting, you know, the courage to leave, or to take all the inspiration that we got that we'll be getting in the new moon, and saying, wow, you know, I see the world differently now. It's like, kind of like we have this cosmic experience, and then we come back into our shoes and we say, wow, you know what? I'm going to change my life. I don't want to do my life the way I've been doing it. I see a bigger picture. So this is, again, what's available to us. And it might mean that you let go of the way things have been, but knowing and taking that leap and risk, and taking that leap of faith, because you've experienced something grander that you want for yourself, and you're willing to make that change. Let's see. Oh, and like I said earlier, last thing I just want to go over is then March 28th, Mars is going to be conjunct the North Node in Gemini. So the North Node's been moving. Of course, the nodes always move backwards. They start at 29 degrees back in May. Last May, it was 29 Gemini. So it's now going backward to 14 degrees of Gemini. And Mars will line up with the North Node of 14 Gem. So again, Mars action-oriented, making these changes. The nodes are always indicating, you know, where we grow and evolve, and collectively, everybody, you know, the North Node's in Gemini for the whole world. So depending on where that is in your chart is where these evolutionary changes are really, you know, taking hold. And the North Node will amplify things, increase things. So, you know, you could say that there's like bold new directions. Remember, Venus being in Aries, Mars rules it. So there's this definite connection with Venus there, Mars and Venus. So taking these bold, new, assertive directions about siblings, about learning, maybe going back to school, networking, relationships with others, love relationships, relationships with women, maybe your mother, or just women in general. So these are places that, for us to, juicy opportunities for us to grow. The last transit I just want to mention is on March 29th. Mercury is going to be conjunct with Neptune. So early in the month, we had the sun, the moon, Venus, and Neptune. Now it's Mercury's turn. He's going to hook up with the cosmic consciousness God, right? The Christ consciousness. So that'll be, again, more trippy, mystical, cosmic potential for connecting with divine. I mean, God, I can imagine the dream state. You guys keep a journal. I always keep a journal, but I always notice when there's profound Mercury transits and Neptune transits, oh my goodness, the dream state is really rich. So a good tip is to keep a journal. It could be, any kind of notebook, whatever, and always I keep a pencil, not a pen, because sometimes if I wake up, I don't want to move, try not to get out of bed and, even if to use the bathroom, just write down that dream because it easily dissipates. But I use a pencil in case I'm writing on my back and I don't want the ink to run out. So I keep it as a pencil instead of a pen, but whatever works for you, very important to, very fascinating to journal and then look back and see, the things that our higher selves are telling us. Mercury in conjunct Neptune, you could have dreams with, cunning little short men, androgynous looking beings, or you could be a man on a bicycle, that's Mercury rules bicycles and transportation and cars. So if you're having dreams like that with bicycles and cars, it could be that Mercury, the energy of Mercury is talking to you through the dream state. So anyway, just some ideas. Mercury also rules commerce, buying and selling and retailing and stores and craft work and, siblings. And, I think of small business owners and buying and selling and all that, busyness and facts and data and, notebooks and writing, certainly writing. Maybe you write, maybe that screenplay or your play or whatever that you've been working on or wanting to start. This would be a great month to get that going with the new moon. And then when Mercury conjuncts, you could be getting some really cool downloads about your writing and such, and help from the invisible realms. Just call on the divine and whoever you align with, guardian angel, whatever. They're there, free minutes, unlimited. So let's see. Yeah, and not to judge yourself about it, and sometimes when we're so infused, if we have a really deep cosmic experience, it's hard for other people to get it, you know how that is. And so just to keep trusting yourself, and even though you might look a little weird to others, you're like, no, I'm really going to leave that job or that person because it doesn't feel right. Oh, but what the rational mind might want to step in, but that Mercury-Neptune connection might be like, you know what, it's okay. But again, always checking in with ourselves. And that's why, having a community of kind, caring friends and family around us is so important. So we're not all the way over to one side where we're, shoeless and haven't paid the rent, because I saw God. It's like, okay, well, now, but we also have to pay the electric bills due. So, it's keeping that balance, getting the best of both worlds. So anyway, that's all I have to say for today. I hope you enjoyed that and got value of it. Please leave your comments below. I love hearing from you and appreciate all of the wonderful things. I hope this month of March that you use it in the highest way and let your imagination soar. Trust in the divine, trust in your own self. There's an enormous amount of potential awaiting us with this Pisces, all these juicy Pisces, Neptune, Mercury, Venus, the sun, the moon, right? It's a Pisces party. So woohoo! Stay sober. and only get drunk in divine bliss. Okay. Don't try not to, whatever. If you're going to drink wine, just drink a lot of water halfway through, then you don't get the hangover. All right. Just saying, Anyway, yeah, whatever. I have faith and trust that everybody does whatever they need to do for their highest truth. So I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful month of March, and I'll be talking to you soon. I'm so excited because the next podcast, I have Demetrius Begley back on. Yay, I haven't talked to him since last year. He's going to be sharing with us all kinds of fascinating things. He's an incredible a producer, event. He's the rainmaker in the astrological community. He makes amazing conferences happen that are on the very forefront of our world. LGBTQ astrology conference, Black astrologer conference. And, this is the this is where the action's at right now. This is the very edge of progress. And Demetrius always is on that edge. So that's why I love to talk to him. And so he's going to be sharing all kinds of good things with us. So that'll be our next episode. I look forward to seeing you all again very soon. And until then, namaste. This is Irlianna Samsara, StarSound Speaks, StarSound Astrology. Thank you all for listening. Namaste.